The heat in Atlanta clung to my skin like a second layer, the cicadas outside sawing away in the heavy August air. I was halfway through answering an email when the dining room door slammed open. Sasha swept in her designer purse, swinging at her hip like she meant to use it as a weapon. She didn't bother with hello. "Skylar, you need to pack up and go," she said, her voice a sugar-coated blade. "People who lounge at home all day don't belong in a house like this. Maybe find yourself a little studio downtown. Something more your speed." Her eyes flicked over me, my curves, my fuller frame softened by years of 12-hour days at a desk, and her lip curled. "All that sitting hasn't done you any favors. Too plump for a place this nice, don't you think?" My jaw actually dropped. This was my house, the one I'd poured my heart, my savings, and every ounce of energy into building. But Travis, my husband of 7 years, just leaned back in his chair, smirking like this was some kind of entertainment. Across from him, Clara and Vernon, both retired and comfortable in their judgment, nodded along as if Sasha had just delivered gospel truth. To them, remote work meant I was lazy. If I wasn't punching a clock in some downtown office, then I was just playing on my computer. And as Sasha's words settled over the table, I felt the truth slam into me. They'd been whispering about me for weeks, convinced Travis built this house. The same house I paid for every single month. All $7,500 of it, while they looked me in the eye and saw nothing but a freeloader. My chest tightened until it hurt. I was 28 when my world cracked open. My parents were driving back from a weekend trip when their car hit a slick patch of highway and spun out. They were gone before the ambulance even arrived. I had no siblings, no aunts or uncles close enough to lean on, just an apartment that felt too quiet, and days that seemed to stretch without meaning. One rainy afternoon in Atlanta, I was standing in the dim hallway of my old office building, staring out at the downpour streaking the glass, willing my eyes to stop burning. I didn't hear the footsteps until a low, steady voice said, "You okay?" I turned, and there he was, Travis. Back then, he was working maintenance around the office parked tall with an easy smile that didn't feel forced. Something about the way he stood there, not pushing, just waiting, made me answer. I told him everything. The accident, the funeral, the hollow way mornings felt now. He listened without glancing at his watch, nodding slowly before saying, "I can't imagine losing my parents. Clara and Vernon mean everything to me." After that, we'd talk whenever he passed by, first a few minutes here and there, then longer chats over coffee from the corner cafe. He'd suggest hole-in-the-wall barbecue joints he swore had the best brisket in the city. I went along, and somehow with him, I didn't feel the pressure to smile or get over it. He let me be broken without making it awkward. Within months, we were dating. He introduced me to Clara and Vernon, both retired, both warm, in the way that made you forget the clock. They invited me to their Sunday dinners and Decatur fried chicken sweet tea, the kind of easy laughter that had been missing from my life. For a while, it felt like I'd been folded into something whole again. A year later, we married. No big proposal, no sparkler-lit Instagram moment, just a quiet agreement over dinner that we were better together. We rented a small apartment near his parents. Life felt possible. I left my office job for a remote role at a tech startup downtown. It paid the same but gave me flexibility in case we had kids someday. Travis earned less in his new low-level admin role at an office park, so I offered to cover rent, groceries, and utilities. "You're good with money," he'd say with a grin. "I trust you." Still, he didn't really understand what I did. If he came home early and saw me on Zoom, he'd smirk. "Must be nice, chilling all day." Sometimes he'd tap my stomach lightly and joke, "Maybe you should swap that laptop for a treadmill." I laughed it off, but each comment landed like a small stone in my shoe. Nothing that stopped me but enough to notice. Back then, I thought it was harmless teasing. Things began to shift the year Clara and Vernon hit a rough patch. They'd always been proud, careful with their retirement savings, but between Vernon's unexpected knee surgery, Clara's prescription costs and grocery prices that seemed to climb every week. They were barely keeping their heads above water. One night over dinner, Clara's voice wavered as she apologized for being a burden in our cramped apartment. I hated seeing them like that. They'd been there for me when I was at my lowest, and now it was my turn. What if we built a bigger place, I suggested, somewhere with space for everyone? I'd been saving for years money from my parents' life insurance, slowly grown through late-night research into stocks and real estate. It wasn't flashy wealth, but it was steady, solid. Travis's eyes lit up, and Clara and Vernon's faces softened into something I hadn't seen in months, hope. We found the lot in a quiet suburb outside Atlanta. It was perfect tree-lined streets neighbors who waved from their porches. I sketched out a vision in my head, a modern two-story with floor-to-ceiling windows and a wraparound porch where Clara could sip tea in the afternoons. The down payment came from my savings. The mortgage, $700 to $500 a month, went into my name, and my engineering salary would cover it all. Then the add-ons started. A standing shower for Clara's knees. A home theater Travis swore would bring everyone together. The costs swelled, but I agreed. This was supposed to be permanent. Somewhere along the way, Travis began telling the story differently. To his parents, he became the one making it all happen. With his modest administrative job, he talked about building this place as if his paycheck were laying the bricks. Clara and Vernon thanked him at every turn. My contributions became invisible. One evening, I pulled him aside. "Can you just tell them I'm paying for this?" He waved me off with a grin. "Skylar, give me this. It's not a big deal." But it was. Soon Clara and Vernon were making comments, half jokes, about how lucky I was to live in his house. Then I overheard Travis exaggerating to them about his work, making it sound more important than it was. Not lies exactly, just stretched truths that kept me in the shadow. When we moved in, the warmth was gone. Clara would storm into my home office mid-Zoom call snapping. "The dishes don't wash themselves." Sometimes she'd tack on, "You're just sitting there getting fat." Vernon wasn't subtler. "Travis works hard and you lie around on that computer." Instead of correcting them, Travis fed it. "Yeah, she's on that laptop all day." He'd mutter like I was playing solitaire instead of funding the roof over their heads. I started working from coffee shops in Midtown just to breathe. One night, I begged him, "Tell them the truth. My salary isn't pocket money, it's their lifestyle." He just sighed. "Come on, they're old-fashioned." And then Sasha arrived. 30, tanned from Miami, full of stories about her glamorous life as an event planner. Stories that crumbled the moment she admitted her business had tanked. Clara and Vernon didn't care. They fawned over her, made room for her things. From day one, she zeroed in on me. "Must be nice playing games all day," she said with a pointed glance at my midsection. "Looks like the job's not the only thing keeping you in that chair." She repeated the line to anyone who'd listen, flipping our roles, hinting I was the dependent one. Dinner became unbearable. I'd cook, then retreat to my room, while laughter spilled from the table. Sasha's voice cutting through the clatter. Sometimes I'd catch words like lazy and fat before the walls swallowed the rest. It wasn't just about my work anymore. It was my body, my worth, my place in the house I'd built. And every day, it felt like I was shrinking in a home that only seemed to grow heavier around me. The heat that night was thick enough to taste the kind that clings to your skin and makes every breath feel heavy. Sasha had been visiting for a week, but she'd practically claimed the living room, her suitcase spilling open, her shoes scattered like landmines. Over dinner, she leaned forward across the table, a slow smile curling on her lips. "I've decided I'm staying here forever," she said, like she was announcing a promotion. "This house is way too nice for someone without a real job. You should move out. Skylar, get yourself a tiny studio downtown. Something more you." Her eyes swept over me, lingering like a sneer. especially for someone as fat and lazy as you sitting on your butt all day. Clara actually clapped her hands. That's a great idea. You stay home doing nothing and you're just getting bigger. Vernon nodded in agreement, his mouth twisted in something between pity and disdain. Travis chuckled like it was a good-natured joke. My chair scraped loud against the hardwood as I stood, my voice trembling but loud enough to cut through the air. This is my house. I paid for it with my savings, and I cover every bill, $500 a month every month. The room went silent. The cicadas outside suddenly louder. Then Sasha snorted. Liar. Clara's voice hardened. Ungrateful. Vernon muttered. Delusional. Travis's face flushed, not with shame, but with anger. Travis's face flushed, not with shame, but with anger. His eyes narrowed, and there was an unsettling calm in the way he reached for the folder beside his chair. He slid it toward me with a deliberate slowness, almost savoring the moment. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision, his grip. His smirk, the way he leaned back in his chair, said it all. He'd been waiting for this like a hunter, waiting for the perfect shot. Stop making things up, he barked, yanking a stack of pre-filled divorce papers from the folder and slamming them onto the table. Sign these or get in line. Stop making things up, he barked, yanking a folder from beside his chair. He slammed a stack of pre-filled divorce papers onto the table. Sign these or get in line. My heart pounded so hard it almost drowned out the moment. I thought about my parents, how they'd raised me to stand my ground, and something inside me snapped. My voice was steady now. Okay, I'll sign, and I'll transfer the house and the mortgage into your name. His eyes lit up like he'd just won the lottery. He had no idea. The next week was a blur of meetings, my divorce lawyer, the bank. Travis whined about how boring it all was scrolling on his phone while the loan officer explained the $7,500 monthly payment. Travis, I said quietly, that's a big number. Are you sure you can handle it? He laughed, puffing out his chest. I can handle it. He even flexed his arms like this was a weightlifting competition. By Friday, the papers were signed. Travis was practically dancing in the kitchen telling Clara, Vernon, and Sasha, it's my house now. They started planning an anniversary week shopping, dining out, treating themselves. Before they left, Travis tossed over his shoulder, move out while we're gone. I didn't argue. I started packing, but not the way they thought. The sofa they'd sprawled on while mocking me, sold. The fridge I'd stocked, sold. The dining table where they'd laughed at me, gone. By the time they rolled their suitcases out the door, the house was half empty, and by the time they came back, I was already gone. The divorce went through without a hitch, the mortgage was transferred, and for the first time in years, I could feel my shoulders drop. I didn't just walk away, I upgraded. Using the capital I'd built from my parents' life insurance carefully invested over the years in steady stocks and modest real estate, I bought myself a penthouse in downtown Atlanta. Floor-to-ceiling windows that spilled light across polished hardwood floors, a gourmet kitchen with marble counters, a balcony that looked out over the skyline like it was mine alone. The old house had been all Clara and Vernon's taste beige walls, floral curtains, furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread from 1995. My new place was me, bold colors, modern art, a corner nook where I could code with the city humming below. For the first time in years, I breathed without feeling watched. I kept my investments to myself. If Travis and his family had known, they'd have rattled around me like vultures. Instead, I settled into a rhythm. Morning yoga in Midtown, slowly reclaiming my body from the shame they'd piled on me. Cooking classes at a local market, learning to perfect dishes I'd once been too tired to enjoy. My neighbors were artists, entrepreneurs, people who didn't care if I worked in pajamas. I'd sip coffee on my balcony and feel the quiet stretch around me. The sarcastic, lazy jabs, the digs at my body, the constant requests, they were gone. Freedom was the best gift I'd ever given myself. The first time I heard from them after they got back, I was on the couch with a glass of wine watching the sun drop behind the city. Travis's voice burst through the phone, furious. "Where's my stuff? The TV?" "The furniture." "I sold it," I said evenly. "I bought it. I sold it. You're a big shot now. Buy your own." I could almost hear him blink in confusion before the line went dead. A month later, walking home from yoga, my phone lit up again. This time, his voice was high and panicked. $7,500 a month. I laughed. "The bank explained it, Travis. You signed the papers. I thought it was paid off. Why didn't you tell me I did? You were too busy scrolling through your phone." He tried another angle. "Can you just help out for a few months, until I figure it out?" I pictured him standing in that half-empty house, his parents arguing in the background, Sasha sulking. "No," I said. "Be the big man you told them you were." I let a beat pass before adding, "I'm in a luxury condo now. Investments paid off." The silence on the other end was comfortable. After that, the calls multiplied. I ignored most of them. One voicemail slipped through Skylar, the bank's sending alerts. What do? I didn't reply. Instead, I focused on my life-writing code for my startup, perfecting my spicy fried chicken recipe, hosting game nights with neighbors. Atlanta felt alive again. Through mutual friends, I heard what was happening. They'd blown through their savings on shopping sprees and steakhouse dinners, all expecting Travis to handle the bills. Sasha's business had failed months before. She wasn't just jobless, she wasn't even looking. Travis had torched what little he'd saved, trying to keep up his image, even funding Sasha's whims. The bank's warnings piled up unopened. They convinced themselves someone would swoop in. Then the final notice came demanding the full balance. The auction date was set. Travis called in a frenzy. "Skylar, they're taking the house. Can't you pay it off? You've got that condo money. I was in my kitchen chopping vegetables for a new recipe. Travis, you signed for that mortgage. It's your problem. They're broke. Sasha's unemployed. I can't." "Pool your savings," I said lightly. Silence. Then he admitted they'd ignored the notices, thinking I'd run back. "We're strangers now," I told him. In the background, voices rose: Clara accusing Vernon Sasha, whining, Travis cursing me. I ended the call. The truth was catching up. His parents had clung to the image of their son as some corporate success, never knowing his job barely covered the basics. Sasha's failures followed her like a shadow, keeping her off any payroll. And Travis, well, he'd built his whole identity on a lie. When the house was auctioned, they crammed into a shabby apartment on the edge of town. On the day of the move, a neighbor told me Clara sat on the front steps for hours, a faded cardigan pulled tight around her shoulders despite the heat. In her lap was a cardboard box battered, sagging at the corners, filled with the last scraps of their life in that house. A chipped mug, a framed photo of Vernon from decades ago, the lace doily she used to keep on the hall table. She stared down at it like the weight of those objects was heavier than the mortgage they'd ignored. Behind her, Vernon shuffled in and out, hauling mismatched bags while Sasha scrolled on her phone, avoiding the neighbors' stares. Cockroaches in the cabinets, neighbors who didn't bother to introduce themselves. The arguments never stopped, sharp words thrown over who'd use the last of the milk, who'd pay the overdue bills. Travis dragged himself to work each day, the weight of 3 adults on his paycheck. His self-esteem ground down to dust. And me, I was learning to love my body in downward dog-mastering sauces in my kitchen, leaning over the balcony to watch Atlanta glitter at night. They'd tried to make me smaller with their words, their judgment, their laughter at my expense. But in the end, I walked away taller. I've never felt more alive. My condo has become my sanctuary, sunlight spilling across bold walls, the hum of the city below, laughter from friends who don't care if I code in pajamas. I'm mastering yoga poses that once felt impossible, each stretch a quiet defiance against the body shaming I carried for years. I grill shrimp tacos on warm evenings and plan a solo trip to Savannah, eager to wander its moss-draped streets on my own terms. Atlanta will always be home, but now I'm living for me. Travis and his family are faint shadows, a bad dream that fades with the sunrise. I've heard he's been asking around for my address, but my building's concierge shuts down strangers before they even get to the elevator. Friends keep me informed, but I'm not afraid. I've built a life they can't touch. Looking back, I see how I let them dim my light, how I stayed quiet to keep the peace paid their bills to feel needed, even loved. But real love doesn't demand you shrink yourself. Walking away from that house signing those papers, it was the hardest thing I've ever done, and the best. Travis, Clara, Vernon. Sasha, they're reaping what they sowed, blaming each other in that crumbling apartment. I don't wish them harm, but I don't carry their weight anymore. My parents' memory lives in me, in the courage I found to leave, to reclaim my voice, to love my body, and to live fully. To everyone who's followed my story, thank you for walking with me through betrayal, heartbreak, and a hard-won victory. If this resonated, subscribe and join our community. Every story is a spark of truth, resilience, and rebirth. Keep carving your path. I'll meet you at the finish line.